Hi, welcome to howtod&d. My name is Fred Wheeler and today I'm going to talk about monster tactics, and this is my monster tactic workshop, which is unscripted, and really it was my second choice to do for this weekend. I was supposed to do painting, and so I don't have an awful lot prepared. So what I'm going to do is share what I know, and you guys are going to pipe in when you think I'm talking a lot of garbage and let me know about it, and I will talk about it with you by all means. I am not the smartest dungeon master in the world. That means my tactics aren't perfect, and I don't always use perfect monster tactics, and I do that quite deliberately for a lot of different reasons. And so I'm going to talk about imperfect monster tactics because that's something I'm really good at. Okay, this book, this monster manual, provides you with all the information about a monster, but it doesn't really tell you exactly how to run them. And so as a product of that, it's like every dungeon master has to learn by trial and error and try and figure out what's going on. So first of all, imperfect monster tactics. Hi Mitch, sound is all right, maybe close to face. I can move it further back if you want. I can just shuffle that backward just a fraction. Maybe that'll stop the focus changing all the time. That better? You let me know. If the sound has probably got weaker because it's moved further away from my face. So, imperfect monster tactics. First of all, I use imperfect monster tactics when I want my monsters to die quickly. That's usually a product of one, I'm just can't be bothered running that encounter and I just want to get rid of it, but I just thought I would put it there as like a bump in the road. It's better now, Darren? Excellent. Thank you very much. So, I know that sounds terrible, like you're just too lazy and you just want to make the monsters die fast, but truthfully, you know, as a general rule, if it's like a small encounter and it's been placed in a book, particularly pre-made adventures, if you don't have a pre-made adventure, you know, it's just there as a speed bump. Also, too, I have this nasty tendency of trying to build up a false sense of security in my players with a whole lot of very, very easy encounters, and they kind of figure, oh, Fred can't do anything to me. And then eventually I'll bring out the big guns. I'll start off with quite a few really easy encounters. They get complacent, and then I hammer them with something really, really hard to see what they'll do. And that sounds terrible, but it's a good way of surprising your players. And really, being a dungeon master and playing monsters is about surprising your players. It's actually very hard to surprise players, particularly if they're really new, not really new, if they're experienced. I have a lot of power gamers, a lot of experienced players at my table, and they know the game better than I do. So as a result, I have to be sneaky. So hence I will present a whole lot of very easy encounters, have them die. They'll use imperfect strategy. And also too, once your monsters get to half strength and the fight is pretty much over, let them die, you know, let them move on, let them surrender, let them flee. If you have murder hobos at the table, they're probably going to just polish them all off, but so be it. And that's a lot of the reason why I'll use imperfect monster tactics. Also too, when you're using imperfect monster tactics, it sort of represents that not every single monster is super smart. Now, just because a monster has an intelligence of 2 doesn't mean it's stupid. Okay, you got to remember that instinct and survival experience from their mama and their papa are probably going to be quite useful, and they're actually going to provide enough information for most creatures to do the sensible thing. It's when you start getting to really complicated strategies that we're starting to look at monsters that are in the 8 to 10 intelligence range, and also don't forget wisdom, because wisdom is part of that as well. Okay, so I had written a whole bunch of tactics on the zombie. You can find the zombie on page 316 of the monster manual. And so what the heck do you do with zombies in terms of their tactics? I mean, they're not very bright, so how do they work? They can take a phenomenal amount of damage, but they're really easy to hit. Do they really care if they get destroyed? Probably not. They probably have no interest in worrying about their own survival. They are undead creatures after all. Now, a lot of people think that zombies, because they are zombies, are looking for brains. Brains. I want to eat brains. Well, truthfully, Dungeons and Dragons zombies aren't really interested in eating people. They just want to kill everything. And there is a fantastic video by AJ Pickett on YouTube about the undead and zombies, and how really all they're interested in doing is, because they're evil, is they want to just destroy everything that lives. That's their sheer goal, is just to destroy anything that lives. So you don't have to worry about zombies eating your players. You can do that. That's certainly the modern view, that it's infected by some sort of virus, and that virus is being spread around, and then they going to consume you. But that's a concept that came from Night of the Living Dead. It's not actually the concept that's presented in Dungeons and Dragons, although you can change that. So certainly killing the players and surrounding them and just pounding them as much as you possibly can is probably the most that most zombies are going to do. Zombies don't move very fast. They only, they're moving 20 feet. And so if they dash, they can do 40 feet, which means the players can pretty much just keep disengaging and moving away, and the zombies never get to make an attack. It's a ridiculous situation. They can either move away and attack from range, or they can just disengage, and this is like a creature that's so slow that they can't get up into combat and make an attack because they had to dash. I don't know why the camera has gone a bit foggy. It just keeps popping in and out. Maybe because my camera is getting old, I do not know. So, zombies don't worry about fighting to the death, because really they're not worried about death. They're just going to keep going at it, okay? And they're not very stealthy. So I don't think you're going to find them trying to rely on stealth. So sneaking up on somebody is probably not what's going to happen. As a general rule, I would say that's the gist of it. I could say more. They certainly would hate clerics. But zombies, I actually will do a sort of in-depth video with miniatures and show you how they work. So that's zombies. I have actually been working on a monster which I like using. Oh my god, that camera keeps moving around so much. Oh, frustrating. I've been working on the giant scorpion. Now, you can find the giant scorpion on page 327 of the monster manual. Giant scorpions in real life, they're honestly not very aggressive. So if you think that your scorpion is going to be aggressive and attack, it's probably not. If you have a look on YouTube at how, or on video or on TV, how scorpions, not giant scorpions because they don't exist, right? They don't really go after people. They don't really do any kind of attacking. You have to attack them first, and probably multiple times, and they're probably only going to attack you if they are being disturbed. If you disturb where they are, if you interfere with them, then they're likely to do that. If they're hungry or trying to defend themselves, then they will probably do something that will involve attacking the players. But other than that, they're really, they're kind of nice. But we're dealing with a Dungeons and Dragons giant scorpion, so we can make it do whatever the heck we like. But we can bring some of that realism from the actual creature into our game if we want. What do you got here, Eric? Good ode, even 9-9ing. How's it going? Good evening, Eric. Okay, here we go. All right, so how would you play it? Well, first of all, it's only got a couple of attacks. It's really only capable of using its pincers and claws and its stinger. So its first thing is it's probably going to pincer their target. It can grapple it. As soon as it hits with a claw, it's going to grapple it. Just because it's grappled with one claw doesn't mean it won't use the other claw and get a good hold on it, which means now the players have got to break 2 grapples from both claws if it's successful. Then it's time to start using the stinger. This is how a scorpion operates. They grab them, they try to use its superior strength to hold them in place while they sting it. Now their stinger on most scorpions truthfully aren't that poisonous. that stinger is actually only designed to paralyze the target so it can eat it, or crush it and then eat it, or to slow it down, slow its metabolism down, make it more vulnerable to attack so it can crush it and pulverize it with its claws, because really scorpions just like to muscle it up. What have you got here, Eric? My last giant scorpion was a crit monster straight out of the book. Well, most things that crit are going to be a monster, but yeah, no, I like the giant scorpion. It's a nice monster. It's fairly simple to run. It's not terribly difficult, and you can do pretty much anything you like with it. It also has blind sight, so it's probably going to be found in a location that's quite dark. Hence, if you have a group that don't have dark vision and they disturb it because they set a light on, the light's probably not going to interfere with it. It's the fact that they've disturbed it, and you know, it's going to lie under something. They don't really like being in the sun. It tends to cook them, so they're going to be in shade, away from the sun if they can. That's not the case with every single scorpion. It's an arachnid, right? So arachnids have an odd way of operating. Also too, I feel like one single giant scorpion is just not really that interesting, and even for a first level party, although it can do a lot of damage, probably take down one character, you probably want to throw in a couple to make it interesting. And so that means you've got to decide whereabouts that's going to be. They don't necessarily operate alone, they can be in groups. Okay, if you guys have any monsters you want me to talk about as we go, I'm really happy to do that. So just throw it up in the comments and let me know what you want me to talk about in terms of a particular monster, and I'll do that. Eric, what do you got here? They getting 3 or 4 tomorrow, going to change the stinger to fire instead of poison. Yep, that's another thing with the stinger. I feel like you don't really get the poison condition when you get stung by a scorpion stinger. And that's probably to reflect that most scorpions don't have a particularly strong stinger. It just does poison damage. Sounds really cool though, by the way, Eric. I don't want to talk too much about it. I don't really agree with the fact that the scorpion doesn't do... It does poison damage, but it doesn't impart the poisoned condition. I feel like you could definitely change that, and you probably should. But I'm going to talk about that probably in another video that's dedicated to the giant scorpion. Alright, so next I'm going to talk about the lion. Unless somebody throws something up in the chat and wants to talk about something else, because I did write a few notes on the lion, and you can find the lion on page 331 of the Monster Manual. And you might be under the impression that a lion is going to hunt on their own. Well, really, they don't hunt on their own. They usually hunt in a group. It's very rare for a lion to go off on its own to do any kind of hunting. In fact, it's quite common for lions, certainly the female, to hunt in a group, and they have a very particular way of hunting and targeting their victims. One, they don't do it in the open. They're going to use stealth because they're good at stealth. They're going to use long grass or cover of some kind. They're going to usually set some sort of ambush, and they're very sneaky. What they'll use is either a semicircle and sort of form around the group or creature or animal they're going to target, and sneak up as close as they can, and then they'll target it. Hi, Craig. For those of you who don't know, Craig Watson is the one who made my Dungeons & Dragons How-to&d video intro that you've probably seen just recently. Hi, Eric. How about old school Fiend Folio, Enchanter Beast? I don't know very much about that. Honestly, I can only answer what I know. I mean, I could talk about it, but I would be talking through a hole in my ass. So we don't want to do that. But I'll make a note of it for maybe the future, okay? Because it requires a bit of research on my part. So back to lions. So either a semicircle, like a half crescent, or a moon shape, or they'll form like a circle. And the reason for doing that is Once they've got themselves into position, these lions, they'll then, one of them will jump up, or two of them, and make a dash towards the creature, driving it into the others so that it can be ambushed from all sides. They drive them into the bulk of the group so it can be finished off. The Flumph. I believe the Flumph is actually in the monster manual. Darren, we'll talk about the Flumph by all means. I'll come back to that. Okay, so stealth. And how do lions attack? Well, very simple. They're going to use their pounce. Okay, once they get out of stealth, they're going to move up. They're usually going to have surprise on your characters, and they're going to attack with their claw. You're going to use that pounce, claw them down. Once they've done that, it's time to start biting. That is the gist of it. Lions are all about food, and certainly they will claw a target, but usually that's just to get them down, because that's how their pounce ability works. Get them down and then start biting them. And really they're going to start just trying to tear the flesh off them. They're going to be going for the throat. If you've ever seen a cat, oh my god, that camera is doing some weird things. If you've ever seen a cat, like a little kitty cat, operate, they usually go for the throat when they're playing with anything, really. They'll go for the throat, they go for the kill. That's the area they go for, and they'll use their bite. Their bite's going to do more damage. Okay, so that's how I would suggest you use a lion. So let's have a look at the Flumph. I'm going to have a drink of water, guys, because if I talk for too long, I'll lose my voice. I don't know which page this thing's on. Now, I didn't actually prepare anything on the Flumph. We're a Flumph. Haven't used the Flumph before. The Flumph 135. It's a pretty simple creature. 135, the Flumph. There it is. Okay, so really low hit points. It doesn't have a lot of hit points. Pretty low armor class, and it flies. Well, it certainly isn't going to walk. That would be stupid. It's got a fly speed of 30 feet, which isn't an awful lot, and it's not very. It's kind of dexterous. Oh yeah, okay. Vulnerable to psychic damage. I'm not sure. I guess the Warlock would like that, and maybe the Bard. It has got advanced telepathy, so it can talk to you. It's really not a. It's not an aggressive creature. I don't really think it's going to attack you. If anything, it's just trying to maybe feed off your mental thoughts. That's really what a Flumph would be up to. And I don't think you're going to see one of them. I think you're going to see multiple Flumphs if they're going to do any kind of attack whatsoever. And probably you're just going to stumble upon them. I would imagine they would be feeding off really small creatures that aren't really a big threat to them. They're really not going to go after an adventuring party. It would be very unusual. What have we got here? Prone Defiance. Tendrils. Stench Spray. Make them stink. The Psychic Shroud. Flumphs are immune to any effect that would sense its emotions or read its thoughts. Sounds interesting. Really, I feel like this is more a role-play monster. The Flumph, I don't really think it's like a combat monster. I feel like it's more going to be something that they'll communicate with rather than engage in some sort of mighty battle with. Because really the Flumphs are just going to get crushed. Even by a first level character or party, they're going to get crushed pretty easily. What do you got here, Eric? My miniature lion, Persian, does the bite attack, then 2 hind claw attacks. Out loud, okay. Alright, that sounds lovely. You can't really get an awful lot of attacks in. I mean, if you have a look at the lion as written, you'll find that you can only make either a bite attack or a claw attack. I'm pretty sure that's the case. Certainly that's how I've been running my line, so either that or I'm wrong. It could be. It's entirely possible. But, you know, even when you get a monster or a creature or a beast, you should change it round so the players aren't expecting things. That's really... Same with my lines, Eric. Darren's on the same page as you. Yeah, get in there with a couple of attacks, eh? Make it really difficult. Yeah, because really, in the monster manual, it's a little bit tame, isn't it? You either get a bite or a claw, It's only when you get the pounce that you get to, if you knock it prone, you get to make a bonus attack and use the bite. Okay, so the Flumph. The Flumph is not really a combat monster. I really feel like the Flumph is really designed to be something that you interact with. It's a role play situation, and if the players are really feeling psychotic, I suppose they might decide to engage in some sort of attack with them and butcher them or fight them. But yeah, I don't think that Flumphs are really that interested. Truthfully, I think the Flumphs are probably better off just start floating upward, 30 feet, get out of range, stay away from the nasty adventurers. Okay, so next thing on the list. I have been writing notes, guys, so at least I have got something to work with on this. What I can't do is do this for too long because I will lose my voice. I tried talking for 2 hours on some of these videos and it just drives me nuts. Eric wants the Atyog. And when we come back to the Atyog, I was trying to paint that before. I was trying to put the tan on the red. So before what's this? Darren's got something to say. I use the Flumph like the Horta in Star Trek. Okay. Alright, why not? Might as well. If it works for you. Okay, so I want to talk about monster tactics and the critical fumble. Now, critical fumbles suck for anybody. We'll get back to the Ogre as well. We'll get back to the Ogre and the Atyog. So, critical fumbles, I use them for my monsters. And quite often there's a couple of different reasons why I'll do that. And that's when you roll a 1 on your attack roll and then something weird happens. I don't usually require my players to suffer the jinxes and the nastiness of a random critical fumble table or impart a critical fumble on them, but I will do it with my monsters, and usually that's to indicate that they are imperfect fighters or just surprise my players with something unexpected, an unexpected event. Usually they'll talk about critical fumbles from a monster more than they'll talk about when they got critted by a monster. That's the thing that they talk about the most. That's my experience anyway. Also too, when the fight is almost completely over, it's a good time to start using the critical fumble for your monsters, just so they die a bit faster and pass away, or at least have to surrender or run away, stuff like that. Also, it's a nice way of applying comical relief. You've been building up all this tension, and it's good for a laugh sometimes. Now, what else do I want to say about critical fumbles? Actually, there's lots of different things you can do with a critical fumble, like throwing the weapon away, dropping it on your foot, falling prone, all that sort of stuff. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail because I'm supposed to be doing a video on the topic rather than a live stream workshop. But there's sort of a taste of what's to come. Right, let's get back to the requests. Oscar, let's see if your question I can answer really quickly before going on to the Atyog. God, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. What tactics does an Ogre normally use? Ogre versus 5 level 2 PCs. Okay. Alright. So Ogres aren't the smartest creatures. They're really just about brute strength. Okay? That's how they operate. And I would imagine you'll find that most Ogres are going to be with something else. They're going to probably not travel alone. They'll hang out with somebody who not necessarily is bigger and stronger, but maybe with smaller creatures. Usually an Ogre is like the big muscle for a smaller and weaker creature, so that they can actually survive. And often goblins and ogres are a good combination because goblins, they really aren't very tough. They have lots of abilities, but they're still quite a cool creature to put together because it does make an awful lot of sense. They could also hang out with the undead. I would say that an ogre zombie might. I don't know that an ogre would, a living ogre would hang out with the undead. Most undead don't like the living, so I mean, I suppose you could do it, but it doesn't really make an awful lot of sense. Not certainly in my opinion. If somebody disagrees with me, let me know. That's fine. All right, let's find the Ogre. And we've got orcs here. Hey, you're welcome, Oscar. Not a problem. Okay, the Ogre. Now, the Ogre is on page 237. Ogres are fairly simple. They either have a great club or a javelin in the stat block. I'm not really going to say much more other than because they can do more damage by just pounding things. It's 13 more hit points. They're probably just going to get up close and smack it as hard as they can. And they're not stupid, completely stupid. They are pretty thick, but they're not completely stupid, so they won't be doing things that are utterly ridiculous. Okay, it is possible. You can play them like that. I would imagine that most ogres are probably going to just get up, smash something as hard as it can, and if it starts getting really hurt, it might try to flee, and you can use fleeing as a dodge, disengage, or just run and do a dash and let the attack of opportunity come in. They aren't necessarily creatures that have really complicated tactics. So yeah, I wouldn't bother trying to use complicated tactics with them. Okay, Jay Thomas, what have you got to say? That's a frightening idea for an encounter. An ogre getting attacked by a horde of zombies. Yeah, but you could certainly use the ogre zombie with other zombies. That would certainly make a lot of sense. And what does Eric have to say? Yeah, axe, be good, Oscar, and add pack tactics to a goblins and ogre group for a better challenge. Yeah, certainly that's one way of doing it. Right, so we need to turn to the Atyog. And somebody was trying to educate me. Epifans is trying to educate me on how to pronounce it. Nobody in the history of all the worlds has ever pronounced Atyog correctly. Atyog. Probably not. Well, I know I haven't. You know how bad I am. Most of you know how bad I am at pronouncing any name. Doesn't matter what it is. But let's find this creature. And let's have a little chat about it. Oh, we're moving past one of my favourites. I like oozes. Alright. Okay, so the Atyog, which I don't actually use that much. They usually hang out with these garbage and junk and refuse and just icky stuff. So that's where, and they'll probably be hiding in it, you know, or hanging out with it. And they just eat. They're just eating machines, really. That's what they like to do, eating. You can find that on page 248 of the Monster Manual if you want to figure out what we're looking at. Okay, the pronunciation is a interplanar enigma. Nice, I like it. It probably is. Okay, so Eric is trying to educate me on how to pronounce the name. Atyog. Atyog? Did I get it right? I hope I did. I doubt it is. I probably got it wrong. Okay, let's have a look at this beastie. So, like I said, it's on page 248. That's where we're at of the Monster Manual. This thing's got reasonable armor, got plenty of hit points, and it doesn't have a huge speed. It's about the same speed as everybody else. You know, most of your characters are moving about 30 feet. And it's probably going to be hidden. So, which means it's probably going to have surprise. It'll be hiding under something. The chances are they won't even be able to actually detect it with a perception check because there won't be anything to see because it'll have like total cover, particularly if it's sort of sitting underneath the rubbish, unless it's actually eating stuff. It'll probably be out on top of the rubbish and eating stuff. Well, I don't think it would necessarily be eating it from under cover. It's got dark vision, so a dark place is a good place for it. Oscar, what have you got here? The ogre is being used by cultist fanatics, and the ogre has a bag of holding. Inside of the bag are children from an attacked village that he attacked, right? Lovely, Oscar. Very, very sick, but great news. I'm sure the children will enjoy their ride. I suspect that ogre's going to eat them. Anyway, back to the Atyog. So it has limited telepathy, which means that you can it can send messages. It's neutral, so it's not like an evil creature. It's really, if anything drops into its location, it's really just probably going to see it as food. Nothing else, probably as simple as that. So it's got a couple of different things it can do. It's got multi-attack, so you can make one attack with its bite and two with its tendrils or tentacles. So make your bite, it's trying to feed on it. I would go with the tentacle attack first, simply because if you are successful, you're going to not just grapple, it's going to be restrained, and you want to restrain your target to make the chomping process easier. So tentacles first, bite last. There is also a tentacle slam, but I don't know that you'll necessarily use that very often. It's bludgeoning damage, it can stun the creature. I would imagine that just going with your tentacles, because look, you're going to do 7 points of damage. That's not the big hitter. It's going to get 2 of those, and the real kicker is the fact that they've got to try to escape the grapple. Okay, they can actually cling on to their target and eat it. So that's probably the most you're going to get out of this creature. I would imagine that this creature doesn't necessarily want to be killed. It's not hugely intelligent, but it's got high wisdom, so running away would certainly be something we might consider doing. It's really not equipped to do that though. It's a large creature, it only moves 30 feet, so the best you can do is dodge and move, or dodge and disengage. If you try to dash, you take the opportunity attack on your monster, and the chances are if it's starting to flee at that point, it's probably going to die. So I would go with disengage and move, or dodge and move. Alright. So what has Oscar got to say here? If they defeat the Ogre, then they receive the Letter of Strahd. Oh, you're playing Curse of Strahd. I see. Alright, I'm doing the same myself actually. And save the children. That's what you want to do, save the children. Yes. Okay. Did anybody want to add anything on the Atyog? Because I don't want to say too much more about it. I think that's really the gist of it. Use those tentacles and then use the bite. And I think the tentacle slam is sort of a waste of an action. It doesn't really do enough as far as I'm concerned. I mean, certainly you can... It does say each creature must succeed, so it's supposed to be like an area effect, but I don't really think that it's necessarily going to be very useful, because you're probably only going to have one person, 2 people in the front line. Darren, good summation. Ah, that's a relief, Darren, because I can tell you now, every time I try to make the monster tactic videos, my blood pressure goes up, as I'm terrified that there'll be a dungeon master out there smarter than I that points out my failings. I'm glad you agree. Eric, cut off the eye stalks. Are we talking about the Flumph? That's just cruel. I'd give advantage to the PCs. Okay, anyway, moving on. I wanted to talk about kobolds, because kobolds are a common creature that your players will come across, and it's a low level creature, so often it's used when you're starting out at level 1 rather than goblins. You know, not everything needs to be a goblin. Sometimes we need a kobold. And really basically you can find them on page 195 of the Monster Manual. They're really sensitive to light, so you're not going to find them in sunlight. They're going to live in dark locations. They can't afford to wind up taking disadvantage on attacks, and light hurts their eyes, so why would they do that? They're right into making traps, and part of the reason they like setting up traps and setting up an ambush in particular with their trap is because they are simply so fragile. These creatures are easily disposed of. Low armor class, very few hit points, they know it. They have to move in large packs to be successful. They are physically weak and rather vulnerable, so they like to team up in large groups, and if they can find themselves a dragon to hang out with, they will, because they worship dragons. But if they don't have a dragon, they're definitely going to have a trap-filled location, and they're going to move and live in large groups. Now, with their particular abilities, they have pack tactics, so they don't really want to get up in melee. I know, yeah, your first thought is, okay, I've got a Kobold, they've got pack tactics, let's get into melee combat. But really, Kobolds don't want to do that. Really, they want to be behind cover, using ranged attacks, using their slings, firing off as many attacks on an unsuspecting group of adventurers or their victim or whoever they're taking out, or whoever's decided to get into their particular lair. Soften them up with ranged attacks. When they've got no other choice and somebody else decides to engage them in melee attack, then they'll shift from their ranged attacks to using the pack tactics and going in for the close kill. Okay, they're usually going to surround one character and focus fire, try to take one down. They know that they're vulnerable. And truthfully, I think that once a Kobold has taken damage, it's time to run away. If their force falls down to like half and they're outnumbered, they're probably going to run away as well. And I've talked about fleeing. You don't have to just run away and dash. You can dodge and move, or disengage and move. There's a couple of ways of dealing with that. Yeah, that's sort of the gist, I would say, when it comes to something like a Kobold. And I'm going to do a smaller video on Kobolds with miniatures and go into a bit of detail. Some of the stuff I've talked about here, but other stuff as well. Yeah, they're really about, you're right, Eric, they're really about guerrilla tactics. And they'll use pack tactics, hit and run, secret tunnels, stuff like that. Their environment is going to be not suitable for a medium-sized creature or a large creature. Okay, so I'm going to move off Kobolds rather than talk about it for too long. And we're going to move on to another common monster that you'll use, and that is the Bandit, which surprisingly I have notes for because I was planning to do a video on that topic, and I still will do a video on the topic, so it's shorter and a little bit more clearer, and use miniatures and move things around. But if you have a look on page 343 of the Monster Manual, you'll find bandits. Now, bandits can be used for anything, but the gist behind the bandit is they are outlaws. They don't usually operate within the law, although they might be paid by somebody to do a job. And they could be mercenaries of some kind. It's certainly an option if you wanted to. Bandits are smart enough that their tactics are going to be so wide and varied, it's very hard to give you really specific information on them. I would say setting traps like the Kobold, setting an ambush, or just trying to deceive them. It doesn't necessarily have to be a combat encounter with a bandit. They might just try to rob you or deceive you and rob you. Okay? Darren, what have you got here? I like the morale stat in 2E. It was useful for determining when a creature would break off an attack. Okay, so let's talk about morale, because I haven't talked about monster morale before, which I probably should have. One of the things I would tend to do when it comes to deciding when they're going to break off is once your monsters are outnumbered, or you feel the fight is sort of wrapping up, or they are losing, it's time to make a morale check, and you can do that. Get them to make a wisdom check, okay? DC 10. I would set your DC at 10 to determine whether they run. Now, if they're smart enough, okay, they'll be all right. I think, truthfully, a morale 10 DC to stay in the fight makes no sense, because really I think the check needs to be made with the intention that you roll your wisdom or even an insight check and you're trying to hit DC 10 to run away, not the other way around. I know that sounds strange, but we're talking about, are they smart enough to know that it's time to run? I think that's how I view it in taking a morale check. So I'm DC 10, wisdom and insight check to realize that you're outnumbered, the fight is going badly, and it's time to run. And you don't need to make multiple checks, just make one check for all of your creatures when they decide to run. Okay, Oscar's got something to say. I have a little fort of bandits in the world that I am playing, like 10 bandits with crossbows, and they got 2 prisoners, sons of the chief from the town of Daggerford. Yep. Darren, precisely, me too with 5e. Okay. That's how I view 5e in terms of taking a morale check. You certainly can apply it. It makes perfect sense. Okay, so some of the things that bandits will do. Probably they're going to be hidden and in cover. They're going to look for outnumbering the party. They're not probably going to attack in a party that they don't outnumber. They're probably going to make sure they have the advantage in every way, whether that be surprise or cover, and superior cover would be best, you know, 3/4 cover rather than just half cover. Why would you put yourself in a situation where you can be hit? And also remember, if you have total cover, moving out from total cover, or a rock wall, or behind a wall, taking a shot with your weapon, your light crossbow, and then ducking back out of range so you can't be hit, so they have to come to you. A really sensible thing to do with a bandit. Bandits look easy, but they really aren't, particularly if you use them really smart. Remember the kill box, the gauntlet of death. That's the sort of thing they're going to set up. They're going to put themselves in a situation where the party are really going to be at a huge disadvantage. Okay, I don't want to talk too much more about bandits. I'm hoping that people have got some other things they want me to talk about, because I'm probably not going to make this a long live stream. My intentions are to sort of have a quick workshop, an opportunity for you guys to talk with me and share the sorts of things that you're interested in. And because people have picked up a few topics, those are clearly topics I will talk about as standalone videos in the future. So the Flumphs, the Atyog, and Ogres. This makes perfect sense. I would be happy to do tactic videos on them. What does Eric got to say? I've always found that bandit stat block too easy for my group, even double the size. What would you suggest to beef them up? Okay, so first of all, it's the environment that you place them in. You have to put them in a pretty beefy environment where there's huge disadvantages, where they have to clamber up a hill or cross difficult terrain. You know, use arrow slits rather than just, you know, simple cover like the trees. That's not really a huge advantage to a bandit. They're usually going to set up a distraction, so it makes it worse for the party as well. Fallen. Oscar, what have you got here? It would be a good idea to have a diva fallen on Barovia. I know what you're talking about. I don't want to talk too much about that particular situation. A diva is really a strange and odd creature. So as a result of that, you're going to have to sort of just they're not evil creatures really. You know, they're like, they've got motives that don't make a lot of sense. And the one in the Curse of Strahd that you're probably talking about is one of those odd characters. I feel like if I start talking about it here, it would take too long. My suggestion to you is just play out that particular diva as a rather twisted and bent celestial being. That would be my suggestion. I've had to deal with that situation just recently. Okay, let us go back to the bandits, because Eric wants to know how to improve them. Yeah, doubling the number of bandits is still only going to give you a slight advantage, and you need to add in a bandit captain. Bandit captains are pretty tough as well, so don't just have bandits, have a bandit captain as well. Oscar, thanks sir. You're welcome. I know that really hasn't answered your question that well. I know the situation you're dealing with, and I totally understand where you're coming from. Okay, so we were talking about bandits. Bandits are really sort of one of those broad monsters, NPCs that you have that just are like cannon fodder to a lot of people, but they don't hang around. They're definitely not going to fight to the death. They're going to run for sure, okay? That's how I would play your bandits. So I'm just flipping through here. Eric, you're welcome. I don't know necessarily that's going to solve your problems because like most creatures, players will find a way around them. And I've said it many times that the monster manual, the CR rating for the monster manual is not particularly accurate. You'll find that most of your players, if they're experienced, even unexperienced, are going to be doing all right. It's really going to come down to them botching up really badly to wind up getting killed, or having a really bad time with their rolls and the Dungeon Master having a really good time with their rolls. Okay, so we were talking about the Diva before, and I've just looked at it, and to be honest, Oscar, I feel like I would have to spend a lot of time to go over the Diva. Certainly I couldn't do it in a live stream where I've got no information prepared for you. I've only probably used the Diva once. Never really used it that often, which is sort of a shame. But what I want to talk about next is animated armor. You'll find animated armor on page, where is it? It's page 19 of the Monster Manual. Animated armor is one of those things that we often use. It is always detected by players as, oh, I think that's probably going to attack us at some point. We should attack it first, whether it's animated armor or not. Every suit of armor is animated armor as far as the player is concerned, so it's really hard for them to be a surprise to players. So you have to disguise them as something else. They appear as just a normal suit of armor, and that's not enough. You really got to put them as, I would use the stat block to represent something else, such as a statue, or an animated statue is a good replacement. That's probably the easiest way to do it. There are other ways. You can put a cloth, hang a cloth over the top of your animated armor. You can have it be a wooden doll, like a life-size wooden doll, if you like, made out of wood or metal or something like that. You need to disguise it as something else, otherwise it's too easy to realize that it's there. And of course, it's got an ability called false appearance, and false appearance is supposed to mean that you're going to get surprised, but it doesn't really work out that way. It's got multi-attack, so you just, all it does is slam its target. It doesn't really care about being killed, and it's not going to run away, it's just going to keep beating the snot out of whatever the target is. And obviously your party are probably going to face it, and there'll be maybe one. So if you're going to use animated armor and they are not level 1, then you've got to provide more of them, or just accept that the animated armor is going to get destroyed. I know a lot of people will ask, oh, Fred, what happens if they destroy the animated armor? They kill the animated armor, put it out of commission. Is the armor useless now? Yeah, make it useless. Animated armor isn't really supposed to be armor that they can utilize later on in the game, okay? So I would wipe that out as an option. They only move 25 feet, so because animated armor only moves 25 feet, which is slower than most player characters can move, that means that even if they were to disengage or move away, they can be re-engaged by the players and hit with an attack. So falling back is not an option. Waste of time. Okay, I think we'll do one more monster, and then I'm going to pack it up for today and go to work shooting some video, which is probably what I should be doing, and uploading the new video for Tales from the Yawning Portal, my first impression. Oh, this is what we need to talk about. I've used this before, and it's a cool monster, and it doesn't matter what level your characters are. It still can be dangerous. And it's not about trying to cause damage. and it's either going to work the first time round or it's not going to work at all. So you've got to have surprise with these things. Oh, Eric, what do you got here? How about a great sword attack with the slam? Most displayers of armor in the real world have a weapon too. Yes, I would absolutely go with that. Yep. The rust monster. James, I would love to talk about the rust monster. I probably won't do it today. What I want to do is I want to talk about Banshee. So you can find the Banshee on page 23. Now it doesn't have a very high CR rating. It's only level CR 4, and it doesn't have a high armor class. It doesn't have a lot of hit points, but it flies 40 feet, so it can take itself out of melee range if it wanted to, just by being higher, flying up. And it's got lots of resistances, it's got lots of immunities, damage, and conditions. It's got dark vision, obviously. It can detect life. That detect life ability is really helpful. It's incorporeal, so it can move through things. It can corporeal movement, which is awesome. It's got a corrupting touch. But honestly, it's the wail. If you have a look at the wail and what it does, and I'm going to read it out for you so you can, and most of you probably know, this is what usually takes down a higher level group if you have enough Banshees. Don't stick one Banshee against a high level group. What you want to do is you want to have a couple just in case. The chances are they'll be successful on a save. And you might want to adjust the save because the saving throw isn't very high. But this is what is really nasty. Once a day, it can wail. The Banshee releases a mournful wail, provided that she isn't in sunlight, so make sure it's at dark. This wail has no effect on constructs or the undead. Well, that makes an awful lot of sense. All other creatures within 30 feet of her who can hear her must make a DC 13 Constitution saving throw. On a fail, a creature drops to 0 hit points. Yes, I'm serious. It drops to 0 hit points. If they fail, they are on 0 hit points. That's awesome. And it's only a CR4 monster. On a success, the creature takes 10 psychic damage. So even if they save, they take damage. If they don't, they're on 0 hit points. How awesome is that? That's why the Banshee is so awesome. I love this monster. You just can't stick it into every single campaign, unfortunately. Eric, the Banshee song. Wail, what? Whew, I made my save by +1. Yeah, it's an awesome. John Shackle. Clerics love them too. Yes. Look, if you're going to present your Banshee, you want to try to get yourself into a situation where they are not detected and they're going to get surprised. If they don't get surprised and you've got a cleric, the cleric's probably going to get rid of them pretty easily with a turning, okay? For those of you who don't know John Shackle has been helping me with a lot of the player tactic videos and a lot of the reviews for the new Dungeon Master screen Reincarnated and the book reviews that are coming as well. Hi John. Okay, James, so like a 3-piece Banshee can total party kill any CR party in theory. In theory, yeah. OP, overpowered, yes, but awesome. It is a scary look. High level characters are probably going to have no problem with a DC 13 saving throw. Okay, they'll be rolling in the 20s, so you would have to adjust your DC to make them scary. But it is an awesome monster when you are heading from level 1 to level 10. Level 1 to level 10, Banshees are just going to rock. Okay. The Rust Monster. I was going to pack it up here. I'm going to do one more. I can feel my voice is already starting to fail on me. But that has got to be the last one. Hopefully next week I will have Horde of the Dragon Queen episode 2 workshop ready to go. I just didn't have time to do the notes. Like I said, I've been under a lot of stress recently, so I had to take Friday off. I had a migraine. Don't usually have migraines. James is happy. We're doing the Rust Monster. Let's find out what page that is on. I'm going to say right now that Rust Monsters used to be awesome. They used to terrify players, whether they had mundane, particularly if they had magic, the Rusty Monster. If they had magic items, they were terrified. But 5e has made the Rust Monster a pathetic imitation of the Rust Monster. And I feel that's a shame, because Rust Monsters should be feared. It's on page 262. So I'm going to turn to 262. I've used Rust Monsters before, and I haven't used them as a single monster, or even like one monster. Usually I'll use Rust Monsters because it's only a half CR, and they don't have a phenomenal amount of hit points, but they don't have a small amount either. They've got a reasonable amount. They've got 14 armor class. They're probably going to get hit most of the time, really. You know, there might be occasional attack won't get through, but a pack of Rust Monsters, packs of Rust Monsters, packs of them, lots and lots and lots of them. Those things become a little bit more scary, and they can detect iron, and they have an iron scent, which is right crazy. They're not interested in the players, only the iron and the metal on the players. And so this is what makes them so wonderful. They rust metal. This is the key thing. Go for the Atenai, okay? Go for the Atenai attack, and they don't want to die. These things, they're not hugely smart, but they've got high wisdom, so they don't want to die. They will try to leave the combat and take their rusted item with them. Chances are they're more likely to try to want to grapple with their bite, the metal weapon, and pull it out of somebody's hands than they are to try and bite somebody and attack them. Remember, it's the iron they want. And if they have a choice between iron on something that's trying to hurt them and iron on something that's just been left or dropped, they're probably going to go after the easy iron rather than the one that's trying to hurt them. Okay? So rust those iron items, armor, weapons. When I run a Rust Monster, when I use Rust Monsters, I make my Rust Monsters rust magical weapons. And I know that sounds like a dick move. And John would say, yes, it is. But it makes them really scary. It means that the party, I've had situations, it's like, I don't know if you've seen the Benny Hill show, where they'll literally be running around in circles trying to stay out of range. And these things move like 40 feet, so they're like dashing, or disengaging and trying to flee. And trying to get up high, they're clambering up onto something so the Rust Monsters can't get to them and shooting them from a distance. You want them to rust magical items. Then they make really cool monsters and quite hilarious. And you've got to use them in large packs. You're right, Eric. A lair of Rust Monsters with a hive queen. Yeah, awesome. So that's how I would do it. Honestly, Rust Monsters should rust everything that's metal. Okay, my camera has been going back and forth. I mean, to be fair, it is only a phone and I can't set the focus on it for some reason. What I will tell you is my live streaming will hopefully in the future get better. I'm about to be made redundant in about a month's time, and I've decided I'm going to go and buy myself a Logitech Brio webcam. Now, it can do 4K. Now, I'm definitely not going to be shooting video in 4K yet, because the files will be huge and most people can't view 4K anyway, but I'm hoping my video live streaming will improve. I'll use that Brio webcam instead. I've just got to get around to, I've got the money, finally got the money, I've just got to go and source it, and unfortunately I have to ring these people in advance and arrange things, but I have decided that is the way to go. It's got better audio, better video, capture, and I think that's going to be the solution to giving you decent live stream video off my channel. So yeah, hopefully people found this useful, and if you did, please share, like and subscribe. Same old thing, I say it all the time, I know it's boring. If you've already subscribed, then just share the stuff. Press the like button if you liked it. If you think it's garbage, it's cool, I understand. And until next time, please don't give me a hard time with the new monster tactics that are coming out. There are more monster tactic videos coming out, and I know sometimes I say things that don't make sense and they're not necessarily that accurate, but please don't give me a hard time when I put these things out. Nobody else is doing them. Nobody else. I found one website on the internet that does Dungeons and Dragons monster tactics for 5e, and it's just a website, and he's got good stuff. It's just, yeah, I'm going to try and do this video instead. Look, if you have any questions or any monsters you want me to cover in the monster tactics, put them in the comments, and by all means, I'm hoping I will get round to doing that, because that'll be probably the new focus for this channel, and obviously there'll be content for players as well, not just the Dungeon Master. And till next time, keep rolling those 20s, and I'll see you later, guys.